Hey Fixers, I'm Dr. Jeanette Benigas, the owner of Fix SLP, a grassroots advocacy firm here to challenge the status quo in speech-language pathology by driving real change from insurance regulations to removing barriers that prevent full autonomy like the CCC. This podcast is your space to learn, engage, and take action in the field of speech-language pathology. We don't wait for change, we make it, so let's fix SLP. Hey everybody, it's Jeanette. Welcome back. We are recording in the middle of the day at a super off time. So I have Elizabeth Nielsen with me. She is the content coordinator for our team. And she's going to help me today because we're talking about Gestalt Language Processing. And I'm a medical SLP. I stick cameras in people's noses. I have no idea what's going on because GLP was not a thing when I went through school. That's important to mention because just because it wasn't a thing when I went through school does not mean it's not a thing now. Now, have I kept up in that area? No, I have not. Why? Because it's not my area of practice. So by holding the CCC, that tells the world that I am competent across the scope. But I am telling you right now that I am not competent across the scope because I have no idea about this topic. So just another little point to dig in there, that the CCC does not guarantee full competency across the scope, and it's telling a lie to consumers. Okay.
And I am not competent to scope you, so.
You want to learn? Wait. I brought my scope to our last little retreat.
You
This
did.
next time we can do
We still need to
technical
post
skills.
those.
We can do tech skills next time.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to just read a review. Just a thank you to AMCC415. This person said, so informative. This is a must listen for SLPs. I've learned so much. Fix SLP has totally changed my perception of ASHA. I appreciate their hard work. I'll keep listening and joining the good fight. Well, thank you, AMCC415. Listen, we've learned a lot too over the last 15 and a half months. And for some of us, our perception of ASHA has also changed. So I think the key here is modernization, right? We want to see modernization from ASHA. We've been getting a lot of questions lately from an older crowd, really, it seems. It seems that you want to do away with ASHA. What's your plan for replacement? And our consistent response is there is a place in this world for ASHA. It is to stop selling us a proprietary product so they can take their time and their money, and instead of putting value into the CCC, putting value into the SLP, advocating for us a little better, helping elevate us in our workplaces, coming out with better evidence-based practices, more scholarships for students, doing away with the abuse that students in CFs are taking in their clinical rotations, figuring that out, figuring out how to make us more competent because there is such a wide scope in the Big Nine. We can't do it all. So figuring out these issues and caring less about the CCC or just doing away with it is our purpose here. We're not personally trying to do away with the CCC because people do have it and they're proud of it and they want to keep it, and that's fine. It should be a choice, not a forced thing. And so that's what we're doing here. But we want to see them modernize so they can focus on these things more and be able to. We'll do a podcast on why they can't do some things for us for another day. So we've got this GLP topic that really has modernized how we interact with autistic individuals, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's something like you said, like you didn't learn in school. I didn't learn in school. I learned a completely different way of working with autistic individuals. It didn't feel right for me for a long time. And once I knew this new framework to learn even that there's another way that kids can learn language, was just kind of like life changing. It was a light bulb that went off. Just like, oh, this is it. This is what works with my clients. Like, I'm just happier. My clients are happier. Like, it builds a environment where they feel safe. And it's really not just working with just the language, but the regulation piece for kids and looking at the kid as a whole picture and not something that we need to fix that, oh, they do it this way. We need to put them in this box to fit them in this way. And so it's helping to adjust what we're doing in our practices to really embrace differences. Everyone learns different, so let's embrace it. Let's not fit everyone into a box.
I love that. So you and I are recording alone right now. We had a lot of tech issues while we were recording with Jessica, and she had a very limited amount of time to give us. So I am going to be piecing some of this together. So before I bring that recording in, why don't you just give us a brief overview of the issue right now from our perspective as speech pathologists? Give us a brief overview and how we met her, what happened, and why we decided to bring her on today.
This kind of sparked with the ASHA convention and a certain presentation that kind of sparked some controversy within the Gestalt language processing world. Marge Blanc, who created the natural language acquisition framework, she has her Facebook group, which we mentioned in the interview. She brought up the issues as well as other clinicians who brought up the issues with the presentation. Alexandra Zakos, who is the creator of Meaningful Speech, also reached out in the group and just said, hey, let's have parents reach out. Let's have clinicians reach out to ASHA. The things that are being presented in this presentation, it's harmful language that they were using. They aren't validating any of the research that Marge Blanc and Alexandra Zakos and many other clinicians have done. And so Jessica made an amazing letter, which we'll post sometime this week, and encouraged other families, other parents. So I reached out to her. I was like, I love your ambition. Like, I love your advocacy. And I told her about Fix SLP. I told her what we're doing. I told her, like, you're not the only one that is having issues with ASHA. Like, and I really want to know what ASHA's response is going to be with the parents' concern. We get copy and paste answers all the time from them. How are they going to respond to parents? And so they did get a lot of parents to reach out to them. So they just also got the copy and paste responses, which is unfortunate because here these parents are with reaching out with probably their own background and how this framework has helped themselves and helped their families. And to get a response to basically dismiss it again is kind of hurtful.
Yeah. And so clinicians can still reach out on this topic by using the in touch form to the board of directors. I expect the same old from them. Form letter, completely ignored, not going to take responsibility, ignore us till this goes away in the 24-hour news cycle. But if this is something you want to speak out about, please send a letter to the board of directors, use their in touch form. I've been seeing it all over socials right now. There's a couple key groups that are posting, reach out to ASHA. They want to hear from you. They're asking your opinions. Please, please. We have a lot of new followers, okay? We did that in September, October of 2023. It was our very first call to action. Over 200 people sent letters to the board. It was one line on the minutes, and it was the same thing. Everybody got a form letter response. It was one line on their minutes from that board meeting, discussed in touch forms. And that was it, and nothing happened again. So it's kind of a facade from our perspective. It's like, oh, let us hear from you. We want to hear from you. No, it's a PR move to make you feel like you're being heard because from what we can tell, no action is ever taken from these letters. However, it does tie them up. They have to read them. So, pound them, send them 500 letters.
Yeah.
Those are just us giving our opinions or consumers giving their opinions. The things that really matter are the things like changing the bylaws in the way that they say this is how you change the bylaws. When you're using the legally binding bylaws to do the things and they still ignore it, that speaks volumes. So if they're going to ignore a petition that followed the bylaws, that just shows you what they're doing with our in touch forms to the BOD, right?
Yeah, or even changing any sort of policy. Like I reached out to them to just, hey, have certified non-member on your invoice. Have all of your options on there instead of us having to call the action center. Because then if I want to switch back to a certified member, I still have to call to get it switched. Have all of those options on the invoice. And they're like, well, this is how you become a non-member. I'm like, I understand that. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking for all of these to be an option. Silence.
Yeah.
Couple follow-up emails, still nothing. When it
Yeah.
comes to policy and financials, they're not going to change.
No.
They're not going to listen.
Mm-mm. And I can't wait to talk to all of you about the letters that are being exchanged with ASHA and our lawyer at the moment. But it does appear that they are digging in and have no intention of doing a damn thing. Because we can see changes in verbiage in the letters they're sending to people, in the emails they're sending to people that are direct changes based on the topics we've been bringing up and the letters they have received from the law firm that we hired. So that is coming down the road. We're going at the lawyer's discretion of when it's time to bring him on the pod. So it's coming. An email will go out when it's time with copies of those letters. But yeah, they're still not planning on doing anything. I think they're still thinking that we aren't serious. My assumption is now that they don't think we'll be able to raise enough money to take them on. We have spent, I don't know, 3 weeks talking about their finances. You see what their reserves are. You see what their investments are. You see how much money they have in the bank. They have endless resources to fight us, and they know that. And they think they'll never, we'll just tie them up in court forever financially until they give up. But you guys, I say in this recording, you guys are badass. So I don't think they know who they're dealing with because SLPs aren't happy.
No,
So
we're not messing around. We're
they're gonna
not
F
social
around and
media
find out, I
chatter.
feel. Yeah, they're gonna F around and find out. So
Yeah. So yeah,
anyway, let's,
sustaining partnership. That's what we need. We need more sustaining partners because this is not a fight that's going to end right now. Like we are continuing to fight. So we're going to need as many help as we can from all of you. So become a sustaining partner, share our content because that helps get the word out. There's still so many that don't know about Fix SLP. And so continue to share, continue to tag everyone that you know. Share on your
yeah,
personal page, share in groups. Sharing in groups is that's where you get the reach too. Listening to the podcast, sharing the podcast episodes. Like that's
yeah.
how we need the reach to be bigger.
Yeah. There's been a lot of sharing on Facebook over the last month, and we were able to see a very big jump in new followers who had not heard of us before, which is amazing. When we share, it tends to get lost. But when you guys share with your own story, with your own thoughts, with your own prompts, that's what we see as the most effective. And really, that's grassroots. It's not us pushing us in your face. It's you guys taking our content and saying, hey, this is what I think. Or hey, I'm a sustaining partner. Here's how you do it. Or hey, that it's when you guys do it that we see the results. And that's super meaningful to us. It's an honor to be a part of that conversation. And yeah, so we will have a almost like a capital campaign once we know what we're facing. Like, are we hiring a litigation team in Maryland? Are we, we don't quite know yet where we're headed or how much money we're looking at needing. But just know the money that's coming in, it is being squirreled away. On top of that, we also use it for our back end expenses like web hosting and, the podcast hosting stuff. So yeah, I mean, we I'd say our expenses for all of that is around $1,000 a month, give or take. Sometimes, like right now, I paid a little extra for our website. I paid for a higher plan, just $60 extra because we have a volunteer helping us to catalog all of our content onto our website. And so it was easier if I made her own account. And to do that, I had to pay $60 more for more access. But at the end of the month, when she's done with that project, I'll cancel it. So we try to be pretty good stewards of the money and use it when we really need it. And otherwise, it just gets squirreled away. So when we're ready to go, we're ready to go. So anyway, let's bring in Jessica. I haven't edited yet, so I'm not sure how this is going to be pieced together. We had to redo like the same part multiple times. So here she is, and stick around after because we'll wrap up. We're just going to jump in with Jessica and we'll let her just say all the things. Before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your family and who you are.
My name is Jessica. I am the parent of a wonderful 4-year-old GLP. I've been living a little bit in the world of speech therapy for the last 2 years supporting him. Before that, I had my PhD and worked in a nonprofit for a few years before downshifting to become more full-time parent, part-time professional.
I introduced myself to you and told you a little bit about Fix SLP before we started recording. So I want you to answer this before you knew anything about our previous discussion. Before you came to us today, did you know what the certificate of clinical competence was?
No, I absolutely no knowledge.
Okay.
Aside from, I assume speech pathologists get degrees in their field.
Degrees in their field and that
Yeah,
they're licensed by their state. They're licensed to practice, right?
yeah.
So you had no idea what the CCC was or that it potentially guaranteed some higher level of competency or not.
No speech therapist has ever uttered those words to me.
Okay, cool. And I happen to know, I know where you live. We're keeping that anonymous, but I happen to know where you live. It's actually harder to be licensed or maintain your state license than it is to get that certificate of clinical competency. So while it doesn't mean anything to you, that means a lot to our listeners. So thanks for answering that. You're on though because of a particular post that you made on Facebook that we stumbled upon, and we thought it would be interesting to talk to you. So why don't you give us the story? Tell us what happened, how you ended up posting on Facebook.
Yeah, so, in the course of like learning my son's needs and supporting him, I don't know, probably about 2 years ago, I joined Marge Blanc's Natural Language Acquisition Study Group Facebook group to support Gestalt language processors. And of course, that has been like life-changing and incredible. And so I still follow them pretty closely. I saw the chatter. There was a session at the ASHA convention that really just tried to convince people that Marge's work and Marge's approach is not good, is not founded in research, is not supported by best practices. And in the course of their slides, people shared their slides online. There were really awful statements about echolalia not being true language, is like a suboptimal AAC, I think was the phrase they used, which doesn't even make sense. And like I said, I have a PhD. I have attended many conferences, and my concern, knowing that ASHA was giving a platform to this perspective, was that this little part of the speech therapy field, which has been profoundly life-changing for my family, for a lot of other families, but is kind of its quiet own little thing and doesn't it's not kind of the mainstream, that it would get pushed out and that people would have less access to this incredible, incredible information. And so one of the people who responded to one of the posts said something about, I encourage all of you who are concerned to write letters to ASHA. And I was like, well, I can do that. So I wrote a letter to ASHA and I wrote a post on Marge's group saying, I encourage I just wanted to amplify this suggestion because I wouldn't have known it existed as an option unless I had happened to catch that comment. And I posted the link and I shared the letter that I wrote just because I think it makes it easier to write something when you see how someone else has done it, and it kind of just makes the process faster for people. And And there was a really positive response on there. And I think a good number of people did end up sending letters. And I heard after the fact, we all got kind of the same form letter from ASHA. That was pretty disappointing. I mean, I wasn't like disappointed because I wasn't really expecting much. I was underwhelmed by their response. So that's the story that brought me
Yeah.
to your doorstep.
So you've given us permission to share these letters, which will be out in our content this week if you're listening live when this episode drops. So I don't know if our listeners know, but I blog these episodes. So you can always find these episodes on our website. And what I'm going to try, we're moving towards building out a new website. So we're trying to do some new blog style things. And so what I may even do is either build those letters into the blog with this episode or blog them separately and have a link. So for anyone who's listening, we have a podcast section on our website that you can go to and you can look for this podcast. The latest one always shows up first. It's always the top 3, at least on the current platform we're on, but you can always click to see the rest if you're listening a month from now. So we have these letters. Why don't you give me your thoughts as a mother, as an advocate, as someone who's an outsider to the speech pathology world? You just know your side of, I'm a mom, I've got a kid who has needs. Were you aware of the American Speech Language and Hearing Association prior to all of this happening?
I might have encountered their website once or twice when I was trying to find information, but when I was digging around for my son, it was pretty clear that
Yeah.
I really had to dig to find good information for
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is your perception as a consumer and a mother and an advocate? What's your perception of what ASHA should be doing and what their convention should be looking like for speech pathologists? So as a consumer who's hiring, I don't know, I don't treat kids, but Elizabeth does. If you're going to hire Elizabeth, you're going to assume that the National Membership Association that she is a member of, well, not anymore, but that she's buying products from and being supported, what would you expect that they would be doing, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I would expect that they would be a kind of big tent for the best and brightest, like the best, best practices, best research, like bringing all of that information to clinicians, offering continuing education opportunities so that people can incorporate the cutting edge into their field or into their, daily practice. I have some sense of how challenging it is to be a speech therapist. I'm sure not a full sense, but I would imagine a smart organization would provide all kinds of other sorts of professional support, whatever is kind of needed for speech therapists to run businesses and do all the other things they have to do. I think those are kind of the big things. Maybe I know you've touched on advocacy, and I'm sure because, these are professionals who are licensed by the state, that there's like advocacy at the governmental level that would need to happen. And just like all with a real positive sense of doing the best for people because speech therapists serve people who are really vulnerable. Like they're
Mhm.
literally like the thing that helps people communicate. And I think that's such a beautiful and noble thing. And so that's why I was so horrified to learn about what is going on with this
Yeah.
organization. Yeah.
Because speech pathologists have made a difference in your life.
Yes.
On this platform and in this podcast, a lot of times we can be very critical, but at the end of the day, this is a great job and we do great things for families. And we have all of this junk going on behind the scenes. But speech therapists entered this field for a reason. And you and your child are the product of some really great therapists who went into this field to make a difference and who did. And so I can't imagine being a parent who has this GLP, which I'm going to have Elizabeth talk a little bit about briefly for all my med SLP friends who have no idea what we're talking about. But this is something that has made a difference. And so you would have expected that the American Speech Language and Hearing Association would be putting out accurate and positive information about this. So meaning that at a convention where thousands and thousands of clinicians are attending. I think there were approximately 13,000 people there this year. You would expect that the information is evidence-based and supported and well vetted. And I am going to tell you right now, and I wish we were going to share video, but we're not, because I bet you've never heard this before. They don't vet the content.
Oh my God. What?
So, in order to speak at our national convention or to offer any ASHA approved CEU, you fill out a course outline. And I don't know even if it's required yet. If it's not, it's coming. But you don't even have to, or in the past, you haven't even had to cite the research that you're going to include in that talk or continuing education. If it hasn't happened yet, they are moving towards needing to include at least 5 citations, but you give your goals and objectives, you give a course description, you give the intermediate or introductory, you give the learning level and an outline of what the learner's going to learn. And that's what you submit to the American Speech Language and Hearing Association for approval to offer a continuing education. And
Also,
so
they do vet the proposals.
but it's 2 pages. They're not
Okay.
looking.
Okay.
You can write whatever you want on those things and say whatever you want. They're not looking at the actual content and what's going to be said. They're not looking like if you're pre-recording something or if you're preparing a talk, they're not looking at any of that. It is up to the presenter to be honest in what they're presenting. And so
I will admit that is the same standard in my field. However, it's not a medical field. It's
yeah,
not like
yeah,
lives and like things are at stake.
right.
It's just academics talking to academics about their ideas. Like this is a totally different ballgame when the people who are presenting are like they're more like on the research side, I assume, and the people who are consuming the information are the speech therapists who are not doing the research. They're just trying to be better clinicians, right?
Not even necessarily. So anyone can present at our conference, which is fine because sometimes you'll have a doctor or even a parent. But a lot of times, the big researchers are in now what they call short courses. And after a clinician has paid hundreds of dollars to travel and lodging and registration to get there, if they want to be in those short courses, they then have to pay $50 more per course to be there. So it's even a little gatekeepy in that sense that if you really want to hear the researchers talk about a really specific topic, these days it even costs more money. And
Oh,
so
that is actually really upsetting to me. That's
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
So, Elizabeth, why don't you tell us just super briefly about GLP? What is it? Because I know as a med SLP, I do seek out quality CEUs, and I can't say was GLP wasn't a thing all those years ago when I went through school, and it's not something I know enough because I follow, but not necessarily something I know a ton about. So could you give our listeners who don't know just a brief overview?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways that we can learn language. There's the analytic way, which we all know as speech pathologists that we've learned in grad school is you learn single words and then you add to those words. A lot of times we did not learn Gestalt language processing. So that's just another way that kids can learn language. And a lot of the times they learn language by hearing things that they hear on TV or a song or what someone says, and they actually will repeat the whole phrase. And so what we try to do is give them meaning to that phrase. Sometimes there's a hidden meaning behind that phrase. Sometimes it is at face value. And so a lot of the times we're trying to help them form language and actually get to single words. So it's kind of the opposite of analytic language learning. And so March Blanc's natural language acquisition framework was created, I believe, like 12 years ago. And the last like 2 to 3 years, there's just been an explosion because even in my practice, I think half of my kids now are Gestalt language processors. And I see the difference. And it's like, it is life-changing, just like what you said, Jessica, of just all this time of what I was doing therapy and switching to the NLA framework, it is life-changing.
That's so cool. I wasn't sure if you worked directly with GLPs and like I mean, echolalia is so stigmatized, right? Like,
Yes. And what we
autistic.
learned in school, it was to ignore it. And so giving these kids the value of what they're saying. And it is language, and there is meaning behind it, and being that child-led approach. And so it's just a life-changing approach for a lot of these kids and parents too.
Because, yeah, communicating with your child, I mean, like, that's just foundational. Yeah.
Finding creative ways to communicate of, hey, they're playing a video right now. They're trying to communicate something to us. There's a reason why they're playing this video. Or, hey, they're singing this song, and because they feel joy with it and they're regulated when they say it. So let's give them that joy. Let's not diminish it.
Yeah. Joy is joy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think, why this presentation was so upsetting, because these people are coming from more of a behaviorist approach, sort of the ABA sort of side of things, and they are like threatened by the growth of the NLA approach, which is kind of the opposite of their approach. And so I think their interests were not very transparent so just this whole like storm of bad practice.
Yeah, and it didn't fit their criteria. Was kind of going through some of the feed on Marge Blanc's Facebook group, and she was even mentioning how she offered to train them in the NLA framework, and that was denied. And I don't want to speak for her, but just through reading everything, she mentioned that Gestalt Language Processing, Natural Language Acquisition framework was on ASHA's practice portal up until this research came out. And then days later, they took it off of
Which
the
is
practice portal.
astonishing.
So what do you think about that? How does that make you feel?
It's horrifying. It's horrifying because this is bad. It's like on its face I've obviously trained in research, but not in this field, is obviously bad faith. Like it's just so obviously bad. And for them to just pull that information with no consultation, like they should be best friends with Marge. They should be like banging down her door every day. She's obviously incredible and so generous, but they're not. They're not.
And that's where I think there's so much problem too of when people say there's not enough evidence, they equate that to it's not evidence-based practice. And so they don't look at the lived experiences. That's part of the evidence-based triangle. Those lived experiences matter. Just look through the Facebook group. You see the data right there. You see families posting videos and language samples. That's the data.
It's
And
so
it's being
vibrant.
dismissed.
Yeah, and this is like you could say this is the cutting edge. And like it's new, it's not unproven, it's just like not yet done. Let's do it. Let's get in there and fund it and have more people doing research and instead of just shutting it down because it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, and even equating it to saying it's not evidence-based practice, then it's saying like, oh, it's harmful. This is harmful practices. And it's not. If you look at ABA and listening to autistic individuals, that they're saying is it's harmful. But
And
yet this approach where so many parents are seeing so much growth, yeah, it's disheartening.
yeah, the evidence is saying let's do more research. The evidence is saying this is profoundly awesome. And these
And
kids are
autistic individuals are saying it. Let's listen to autistic voices.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the clinical part of that triad too. Like clinicians who know what to be looking for can verify, like, yes, they are making wonderful progress. That's 2/3 of the triangle.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff I was doing prior to the NLA stuff, it just felt icky what I was doing with my clients. Like it just didn't feel right. But then as soon as all this came about, it's like this light bulb switch. It was like, oh, it just feels right as a person. Communication, it's based off of safety and connection, not compliance based. And so just switching this framework is it's done wonders. So
Ah, that's so beautiful.
My jaw hit the ground because I don't live in this world. So I had no idea that this came off the practice portal. And so, the practice portal is supposed to give you evidence-based tools, guidelines, resources for clinical practice to help us deliver this high quality care across a wide range of practice areas. And it doesn't have to be inclusive of just one thing. So truly, like you said, okay, maybe they feel the evidence isn't there. But like you said, with the parents and autistic individuals and the clinicians, and that being 2/3 of the triangle, they really can outline all of that and say, while this may not be supported in the evidence that we have available to us right now, here's all of the support for that. And here are future areas for research for people to do. And if they really want to say, which I don't think they should, but then they could put on there like a proceed with caution warning. Let families and autistic individuals decide if this is the approach they want to take, because I'm an adult neuro person. We talked to I don't think we've dropped this episode, but there's an episode that I recorded that we discuss how every brain is different. And even in some people, the hemispheres are different. If you're left-handed, your language dominant hemisphere could be your right hemisphere, not your left hemisphere. And so not every approach and not everything is gonna fit every person. And so it really feels outdated to me.
There's one other thing I think Marge would like us to say, which is that there is really nice research. It's only been done by a few people, and it isn't the like comparative control group, not control group, which is what this presentation was saying. There was none
Okay.
of that type of research, but there is really lovely qualitative longitudinal research, and it connects out to other kind of research that supports it. So I just want to throw that out there that there is research. It's just not the kind that these people were
Got
ostensibly
it.
saying is the right kind. Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to plug her group or her community? Can anybody join it and to go see more?
Can
You
anybody?
can join it. You do have to answer some questions about Gestalt language processing. So you have to know like all the stages of Gestalt language processing. Um, but it's the Natural Language Acquisition Study Group on
In
Facebook.
on Facebook. Okay.
Yes. And that much of that information is available through Meaningful Speech on Instagram. Alexandria Zakos offers like a course in it and kind of just puts a lot of posts out there. So if you don't want to join a group but want to see posts about Gestalt language development, she's a wonderful resource.
Before we leave, I was going to have you summarize what your letter was and what ASHA said. And I know you said it made you feel icky. We don't have time for that. But can you just give us your thoughts or statement? Overall, what was their response to you, and what do you think should happen next?
Their response basically said, well, they performed a review and they found an empty review. And that's basically all that they said. It was condescending and not didn't respond to the specific concerns that I raised about dehumanizing autistic people, not listening to evidence-based practice, like all of the things we've been talking about. I kind of expected as much given what had been happening, but I think what I liked about their online portal is that when you submit a letter, it says all of the letters will be read at the next board meeting. And my hope was that by submitting a bunch of strong parent voices or probably also clinical voices, that these letters would at least be read and a volume of them might exert some, at least make them want to guard the bottom line if that's the thing that motivates them, whatever motivates them. In an ideal world, what would happen is they would say, oh, we didn't totally realize the content of this. We only vetted the proposal, not the full slides. You're right. This raises some important questions that we should have a conversation about. Let us reach out to clinicians in this space. Let us reach out to autistic voices, Gestalt language processors. Let us host a real conversation because that is what professional organizations, that is literally their whole job. So that's what I would like. And in that way, using this kind of negative conference thing as a springboard to make something good come out of it. And maybe more people would hear about life-changing information for their families. So
Love that. So reasonable. And I know this isn't going to make you feel better, but that's how they speak to their clinicians as well. Condescending, taking no responsibility. That's it. That's their MO. So Jessica, thank you for we've had a ton of tech issues. This was just a thing, but I'm so glad we were able to get you on and just hear from you. And we're
yeah,
able to now make those letters a little bit more widespread and seen. And, maybe now more clinicians will reach out. That board meeting has not happened yet. The board meeting, everyone, is scheduled for February of 2025.
I
I'll
just want to say that you guys are awesome. And now that I know what SLPs are, how well they're performing in the face of this kind of professional nonsense, I have even more respect for you. So it's been really cool to meet you guys and talk to you.
listen.
Yeah.
Usually I have to click explicit because of Preston, but I'm going to say it. SLPs are badass. We've got it. We just need to like take our autonomy and control back, and then the sky's the limit for us. So,
Love that.
yeah, thanks for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. And
Nice to meet you guys.
yeah,
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm so glad, Elizabeth, that she came on.
Me too. She's fabulous. Like she's such a fighter, fighter for her kid and fighting for us. We love parents that help fight with us. Like, it's empowering.
I don't think it's shocking either to us. Maybe it was to her. But I don't think it's shocking that they sent her a form letter or that they were condescending. But it's very unfortunate, really.
Yeah. And
We
it kind of makes you wonder if they even read through her whole letter and everyone's letter. I think
and
there was probably a surge of people sending the letter, so they're like, okay, we're just gonna copy and paste this to everyone that's reaching out about it
yeah.
without taking into consideration how to respond.
I think everyone's opinion is valuable and needs to be heard. But in her case, whether there were 100 or one, this is an educated mother with a PhD who understands research, who understands conventions, who understands professional development. She knows more than the average consumer. And for her to say, like, hey guys, hey, this is a problem both from the way that you've done this and what was presented as a mother with a child who benefits from this, you think they would have given her a little more respect
Yeah.
as a
Yes.
scientific colleague.
Yeah. Continuing that conversation too of, can you tell us a little bit more? It was just
Mhm.
a complete cutoff.
Shut her down.
Yeah.
24-hour news cycle. She'll be gone. She'll
Like,
she'll disappear.
yep.
Yeah.
Like we'll talk about this at our board meeting.
For five
That's it.
minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Elizabeth, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
We miss Preston.
And all of his
Yeah, but
Prestonisms. I don't have
yeah,
any isms, sorry.
neither.
I don't got it in me. I'm too tired.
Same girl, same. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. Hit the in touch form if you have something to say to the board. Don't be surprised if they're condescending. Give us that 5-star rating and review, and we will see you next week. Thanks for fixing it, guys.